Hello there, my name is Amii, and welcome to Cosmic Curator. I'm here to narrate the story behind my brand, a 5-year creative shift from teaching to building an intentional brand. The transition from being a full-time teacher to becoming a business owner was not immediate. Over the course of 5 years, I gradually transitioned from a professional graphic designer to an art teacher in K-12 art education, and ultimately into building something entirely my own. With a background in design and illustration, I found myself carving out a path that eventually combined image and creative consultancy and tarot readings, as all aspects rooted in my interests and experiences. It's a reflection on the evolution and visual identity of my brand, Moony Hue, not only in terms of aesthetics, but also through personal growth, experimentation, and creative inquiry. Branding is rarely a straightforward process, and this journey was no exception. The spark. Since I was a child, I had long aspired to build a small business. Although I resisted the default trajectory, especially becoming a typical art-based influencer brand, I lacked the financial resources and audience to launch something commercial quickly. But more importantly, I want to create from a place of confidence, not for short-term gains, but to make something sustainable and authentic. While I did begin with art content on social media, I quickly realized how draining it was. The creative process became performative, and I found myself resisting the very act of making and feeling that it was not enough. When I create, I need to be present, not preoccupied with marketability. The name itself was a challenge. I admire creators like I'm a Wonder, Furry Little Peach, and Prepare Fur, each with their own personal and memorable art. I was open to a stage name, but it needed to feel distinct. I was drawn to celestial images and shoujo femininity, but didn't want it to rely on overused motifs like Luna, stars, or dream. Around the time, I was enamored with movement, fascinated by the idea of color. I gravitated towards words like prism, gradient, chroma, but it was hue that stayed with me. Then came Moony Hue as a synthesis of luminosity and color, expressing both mood and identity. It felt instinctively right. Shaping the concept. At first, I envisioned a stationery line as something small and tangible, but between product development, market saturation, and my full-time job, it wasn't sustainable. In parallel, I began studying astrology as a personal interest. The patterns I discovered resonated deeply, particularly how history, art, and design operate in cycles. What's celebrated one decade is often discarded the next, only to return. It was something we always learned in history books without recognizing the context. When I left teaching in mid-2024, I explored the idea of combining art and esotericism into a more academic inquiry. I even designed an early version of a logo, but within a week it felt hollow. The niche was too narrow, the purpose unclear, and it lacked connection to a viable business offering. However, the idea of color kept resurfacing, especially my fascination with personal color analysis. Additionally, I have a natural enthusiasm for recommending the latest beauty products to my friends. I'd had a session in Seoul 1.5 years earlier, and was struck by how subtle shifts in color could enhance natural features. As someone trained in visual analysis, the resonance was immediate. I pursued certification in Tokyo under Koni Sensei, and the experience clarified everything. Moony Hue had found its form. My previous interest in visual symbolism, aesthetic theory, and personal storytelling can be all incorporated within this framework. Image consultancy became a channel where I could integrate artistry, intuition, and education. Core values and non-negotiables. From the beginning, I had several clear boundaries. Avoid cliches, regardless of industry. No stars or moons. Resist fleeting design trends. What feels current now often becomes time-stamped later. Prioritize intention over recency bias. No design choices without meaning. In a saturated space, originality comes from values, not visuals. What differentiates my work is not just my design background, but my analytical depth it provides. I bring my ability to connect contrasting references and create meaning. That mindset, more than any stylistic choice, became the foundation of the brand. Research and mood board. Pinterest became an invaluable research companion. I found myself drawn to understated calligraphy elements, subtle texture gradients, and annotative elements. My influences were diverse: shoujo cityscapes, international Swiss design, esoteric surrealist illustrations, children's book, Japanese woodblock prints, and high fashion editorials. Rather than designing solely for a market, I pulled from my archive of things I loved growing up, visual languages that spoke to me emotionally. I found the work that, rooted in genuine taste, always outlasts trend-driven choices. As I noticed, most existing consultancy brands and fashion companies lean toward minimalistic, neutral corporate identities. That approach wasn't for me, as I wanted refinement without sterility. Something precise but with character. Something that conveyed care and seriousness without losing its sense of self. Early attempts and creative blocks. In the early branding phase, I experimented with combining the double O's in Moony, infinity symbol, which was an elegant idea in theory. But no matter how I refined it, it lacked balance. The execution felt painstakingly and unresolved. At the same time, I struggled creatively. Art had become a chore, and I wasn't creating for myself. I was depleted from trying to make sense out of nonsense. The result was a prolonged creative block, one I had to work through. I turned to therapy and writing. Words offered me a gentler way back into creativity. It was easier to write than to sketch. My perfectionist voice, Sally, comes out when I don't execute the technical details, but writing gave me the permission to process and explore again. My Substack, Cosmic Curator, became a turning point. Through long-form writing and creating the illustration cover, I rediscovered a style that blended fashion, shoujo styling, and fun. It serves as a reminder that it's not always about focusing on the details, but rather about setting a deadline to execute. Although Cosmic Curator began as a separate outlet, it helped me define the broader purpose behind all my creative work. Logo, color, and typography. Many have misconceptions about the definition of branding, as it encompasses more than just a logo or a signature. It's about public perception of you or the company. The logo, color, and typeface are the visual identifiers that enable the public to recognize a brand from the competition. That was a big hurdle for me to overcome. That's why no matter what part of the world you belong to, if you're uncertain where to eat, you eat a Big Mac at McDonald's or drink a latte at Starbucks. Logo design may look simple, but it requires good visual communication skills and design technicalities, as you may consider its flexibility without altering the letter shape or negative spacing. Can it maintain its design integrity as an Instagram profile picture or a Times Square billboard? It takes true craftsmanship to master it, and one of the most challenging aspects to develop this identity. It is the first pieces your customer and audience will see of you. I decided not to use gimmicks and to create a logo type to construct my logo. I started with a typeface I deeply admired. Ayaka Ito's Hane. My first attempt was clunky with an unclear esoteric infinity sign vision. However, after I wanted to pursue image consultancy, the revisions were easier to follow through. Ultimately, I returned to Hane, pairing it with a more organic, handwritten script that reflected my personality. It wasn't perfect, but it felt genuine. I wasn't trying to perform as a logo designer, but just applying my design training in a way that felt personal and intentional. Choosing a color palette was one of the most challenging steps. I love color in theory, but my initial multicolor scheme was way too chaotic, with poor contrast, no hierarchy, and no cohesion. It failed the 60-30-10 rule completely. Blue was a non-negotiable, but it needed contrast. Yellow felt too pale against the soft blues. Red was introduced with proper tension, especially after I saw the Blue Hour collection by Jose. That collection left a strong impression. The final colors became a combination of light blue, coral red, off-white, and navy. Young and yet composed, I was proud of the outcome of the brand's identity. Broader influences. Much of my inspiration came from the outside of the immediate industry. Ralph Lauren at Wimbledon, beauty packaging, and fashion photography. During my online fashion marketing certification, I realized how vital cross-disciplinary references and thinking were to me. I wanted my brand to reflect refinement without restraint, color without chaos, clarity without coldness. The vital blend of lifestyle and theory is something I now carry across every offering in Moony Hue. Tools and process. My toolkit varies depending on the stage. Figma for vector work, Canva for layout drafts, Procreate for raster illustration, Grammarly for text editing, ChatGPT for brainstorming, Descript for video content, Obsidian for writing, YouTube for ambient focus. But before anything else, I begin with pen and paper. It's faster, distraction-free, and forgiving. I believe in using the tools that help you get the work done, not the ones that make it look impressive. Ultimately, the results are what matter, not the tools. Reflection and takeaway. This branding journey has been anything but linear. There were moments of clarity, followed by life challenges, confusion, resistance, and a rediscovery. But I've learned that creative limitation can be a gift, as it forces clarity and intention. When things don't flow, it's often a sign to shift your lens. Step back, pay attention. The signals are always there if you're open to them and what feels right without force. Building a brand is not about perfecting a visual identity. It's about aligning your work with your values, intuition, and unique perspective. It's not always easy, but it's deeply worth it. If you are in the middle of your process, I hope this offers both insight and encouragement. Thank you so much for listening to Cosmic Curator. If you have any insights into your brand identity process or any exploration or any tips or suggestions that you would like to share, please feel free to put them in the comments. I hope you have a great rest of your day.